What is up, my fellow Twebbians? I am Logan, the Totally Epic Gamer, and today we're going to be going over a Tier 15 Devastator build that can get you golds. Is it going to be stacked with legendaries? Tons of legendaries that you need to grind for? No, it's not. It only has a couple legendaries in it, and they're both weapons, and one of them comes from the man, the legend himself, Tiago. And the secondary legendary, not too important, so you don't need to worry too much about it. And most of the tier mods are going to be tier 1 and tier 2 tier mods, something that is definitely achievable by everybody. So let's get into it. First off, we're going to go through the class. We're going bottom build, obviously. It's a very easy build to start off with, doesn't require a lot of legendaries, and it's something that kind of fits the Devastator's overall playstyle of doing large amounts of AoE damage quickly while being a little bit tanky. And I'm going to go through each piece of why you're choosing it, what's important about it, and how it's going to play into the whole part of the build. So obviously we're taking anomaly power right away, getting the seismic skills cooldown reduced by 15%. This is important because as an AP Devastator, when you are not doing skill-based damage, you have to use your weapon. And so if you're going to use your weapon, you're going to use some mod that gives you damage on your weapon because you don't do a lot of firepower damage. So what you really want to do is make it so that your skills on cooldown are on cooldown for a lesser amount of time, right? So here you can see that we're getting Earthquake less and Impale less, and those are going to be our two main damage sources. So it's very good that they're on a lower cooldown. Skill Leech, just very good for staying alive. I really like it. Is it required if you have perfect late game gear? No, but in the early game, you're going to be happy that you have Skill Leech. Anomaly power, obvious. Here, we deflect a little bit into grabbing the Golem perk. I know it also is the Reflect Bullets perk, but what it's really doing is when we pop Golem, we're going to get 45% increased anomaly power for 10 seconds. Now, this is pretty important because it's going to allow us to clear large waves of mobs quickly and just kind of increase our damage output just by that little bit. And there's not too many other great things that we can move into, right, with just only 1 point, so it's a good pickup. Here, we're not grabbing kinetic skills because we're not running any kinetic skills. Resistance piercing, just always good. You know, we're doing only anomaly power based damage. Of course, we want to pierce as much resistance as we can. Anomaly power by 6%, which is great. Here, increasing firepower by 15% of your anomaly power. Sometimes these things look so good, right? But it's just not. Like, imagine I have 300k anomaly power, right? That's 45k firepower. But I have no other firepower on anything else. And I also don't have 300k anomaly power. So it's just not a great thing to build into. It might look really appeasing, especially because it's percentage based, but it's just not as good as it might seem. Extend the distance considered to be close range by an additional 4 meters. This might be good in some firepower based builds, but for us, we don't care. It's not important to us. This is probably the reason that it might be good, but we're not grabbing that. We don't need that much armor. We do fine just the way we are. Increases bleed duration by 30%. The real reason we're taking this is actually because some people will just get left bleed on them, and that's okay for us because that's going to heal us up. So we actually just want the bleed to be left alone. And as you can see at the end of the gameplay that's going to take place here, you're going to see that bleed actually does a decent amount of damage, so it's fine to leave on the duration. Plus, bleed helps us do more damage in terms of the mods that we choose, so of course it's good to have it on for longer. Reduce seismic skills cooldown. Again, same reason. We want to be spamming as much as possible, which means we need our cooldowns to be off cooldown. Moving on, just regular old anomaly power. Nothing too crazy here. Double the damage of class melee skill. I think it's obvious why we don't choose this one. Increase damage by 20% against enemies below 30% of health. This is likely not going to be very impactful for most fights, but as an anomaly power based build, your biggest issue is killing big boss type things, you know, like brood mothers, brood guardians, maybe Moloch, right? Just boss type people. I'm not even going to say blood merchant because if you're doing Paxian Homestead, we have a different kind of issue. Increase speed duration by another 30%. I think it's obvious. Anomaly power by 6%. Again, good. Here we go down and bleed afflict on enemies does 30% more damage. I'm not sold on bleed needing to do more damage, but the one thing I do like about bleed doing more damage is the next skill is you are healed for 25% of your bleed damage. So you'll see I took 1, 2, 3, 4 bleed things that I don't need to take, right? So I can actually get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more skill points back if I don't worry about healing at all, right? Because these are options that I take. I don't have to get to the very end, and I need the very end. So the question is, do I really need to take it? Could I put those 6 points elsewhere? When I was kind of going through the tree, I don't see too many options of where I want to go, right? Where do I want to be to get more damage or to take less damage? And well, actually mainly just do more damage, right? This one's not bad, but I don't really need it. If we go to the top tree, what am I really trying to get here? Nothing. So like maybe I get to bounty hunter. That's great. But how am I going to get to bounty hunter with 6 points? So a lot of it is just not too useful. So we end up staying in the bottom tree really heavily because there's not too much to feed into anywhere else. So that's why we stay around this area. But is it an option to be moved around? Yes. Do you absolutely need it? No. So just moving on from that, bleed doing more damage. This heals us for 25% of our bleed. That's what we stack into the bleed. Makes it harder for us to die. I think that's pretty important because we're going to be standing toe-to-toe with everybody we're fighting. Moving on, skill leech. It's required, but I would pick it even if it wasn't. Increase your armor bonus by 40% of your anomaly power. Now, this you can spec into and get rid of one of the points that we just mentioned. Bleed duration, bleed damage, one of those two, and move into protected by the anomaly. I don't find that I take enough damage in the first place to warrant this, and I'd rather the heal than the armor. I find sometimes even with, huge 400,000 armor like I have on Tool of Destruction sometimes, that monsters will still, take 15k of my HP away. So I don't think the armor is really going to help you out too much, and so I just skip this whole talent and altogether. Moving on, increase your armor by 20%, resistance by 20%, 10 seconds when your skills end. You're spamming skills. It's also on the tree. You have to take it, but you're spamming skills, not bad, right? Increase your resistance piercing by 15%. I think it's just, general piercing is always good. It's hard to get in most skill trees. Bleed, bloodbath, same as before, 30% more damage. We just take it. On top of that, Earth's Heritage, increase time to skill, base damage by 50%. This is very good because we're going to be spamming Earthquake and Impale, although we're not using Tremor, which is that third skill there. 50% base damage is great because that starts our multiplier higher up, right? We're going to do a lot of multiplicative damage. When you're doing that, a higher base is going to always help you out. So that's why we take that. Moving into the skills tree, we are getting Earthquake, Impale, and Golem for the predetermined reasons that we already stated before. We pop Golem to get a big influx of damage. We spam Earthquake as much as we can off cooldown, and then we spam Impale. Fairly simple. It makes sense into the build. I've tested out with different things, instead of Golem going Gravity Leap, but Gravity Leap doesn't do enough damage, 100,000 damage. And it doesn't give me enough mobility in terms of what I want. I have to jump into somebody, but generally I want to jump into the same person. I end up just spamming it on the same person that I'm already using it on. I would rather just pop Golem and do more damage is almost always what it feels like. So I generally just don't care for Gravity Leap anymore. I did use it a lot in the beginning, especially when I was dying more, but Gravity Leap sometimes makes me die because I land right beside people and they just, wombo combo me. I did think about trying Tremors, 20k for each Tremor, and it gives you health and it gives you armor. Again, just not a great skill. It takes too long to go. That 12-second cooldown is very deceptive because it's going on the whole time. So it's not starting cooldown until the actual skill is done. So it does take a long time to get the skill back off cooldown, and it just doesn't do enough damage. So we just kind of skip that one. The other ones we don't really spec into, so there's no reason to really go for them. Endless Mass, Boulder Dash, Reflect Bullets. You can skip Golem and do Reflect Bullets instead. The issue is when you have Reflect Bullets out, as you can see here, I'm not doing anything else. And I like to be able to do something else at the same time. So that's why we like to do Golem. If I had Reflect Bullets, I would pop it and then immediately unpop it so that I can get the anomaly power on other things. So for me, not too worthwhile, and that's why I kind of stay away from it. Okay, let's go on to just the mods. This is going to be a bigger discussion because we have to get through the important parts of what are we really focusing on here, where do we really want our attributes to land, and what kind of mods are we really trying to get, and what gives us the most value. So if you were looking at a hierarchy of your own inventory and mods, where are you going to focus on to make improvements? Because I think that's the thing that a lot of people really need to understand is the hierarchy of mods. It's hard to get perfect gear, that's for sure, but there are some mods that are much more valuable than others that you will need to focus on to make sure that your damage is as high as it possibly can be. Some mods might only give another 10k per earthquake, and that's not as good as maybe getting, another 50k per earthquake. So let's go through what's important here, starting with the left side. We're doing the Juggler, Scrap Grenade, and Fortress. Fortress is the only mod here on this whole sheet that I think is actually difficult to get. It's not super easy. It doesn't come off of everything, but it is super, super important. The only thing I like about the juggler as well is skills life leech is already on it. It's great, good for healing. We like that. Scrap grenade comes on it like naturally, so that's great. Fortress is 43% damage based on your armor. I'm pretty sure at around 30 to 40k armor, the 43% damage bonus is guaranteed. And what that really means is it's not based on how much armor you have. It's a cap. It'll give you up to 43% damage bonus based on your armor. So we're hitting the cap and we're getting 43% damage bonus. This is on everything. This is on our scrap grenade, earthquake. This is on our firepower. This is on impale. This is on our bleed. 43% damage bonus to absolutely everything. Excellent mod. It is not easy to get, but it is going to be the biggest upgrade you can get if you can get it. Other than that, you're going to be spamming a lot of scrap grenades, a lot of reloading, and the juggler is really going to help you out here. Moving on to the headpiece here. These are the attributes that you really want. I got lucky and this headpiece was in the shop, so I just bought it right away. I ended up selling a ton of titanium for it, and I was like, I need this. If I don't get this right now, then I'm going to lose out on probably a guaranteed best in slot, right? So for me, this is not a legendary, right? This is just a really good item. Legendary gear is going to be better, but this is a great item for while I'm trying to farm legendaries. So first, anomaly power. That's your number one go-to. You always want it. Reason, it's more damage. Second, you want cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction makes you spam more abilities. That's going to be super important. You are anomaly powered. You want to be spamming as much as humanly possible. So you want cooldown reduction. And third, skills life leech. In that order is what you want. Skills life leech is great for the predetermined reasons before. Is just you don't want to die. You're spamming a lot of spells. You want to get healed from them. So that's what's really important there. You see I have power assimilation here. Boost your anomaly power by 11,000 for each elite present on the battlefield. This is not required, but I do have it, so I just used it. It was just off a piece of random gear, so I just took it. And, you know, you're going to have some legendaries that you get from your world tiers or just randomly dropped. You will get some legendary mods that I don't even have here, and that's just what you're going to have to use. Right, so I thought it was pretty good. I took it. I also have Captain Hunter, and I'm kind of deciding which one of the two I actually like more, but those are the two tier 3 mods that I do have. Now that's the only tier 3 mod that's actually on armor there. Not required, but we're going to get deeper into it. You can see I also have Spike Forest here. This is one of the ones that's less important. The skill can strike one additional target, which is impale, obviously increasing the damage of your impale by double, but generally we use impale to kill the elites. Right? You don't usually use it on all the little guys. So in that scenario, we don't worry about it striking more people more times too much. We do like the damage that comes from it, but it's less important than the other mods I'm going to show you. Here we go down to, again, anomaly power, skills life leech, cooldown reduction. Great setup. Perfect for this. Really happy with it. Now we have a mod that's really, really important. Earthquake inflicts bleed on enemies damaged by the skill. Very important because of the mod that comes right after. Boost your damage against enemies afflicted with bleed by 15%. We're getting a 15% damage boost on enemies afflicted with bleed, and we're giving them bleed with our earthquake. These are two very important things. If you can't get something like bloody boost, or you can't get the impale that does 50% extra damage to enemies afflicted with bleed, which is right here, rivers of blood, then you don't need to worry about inflicting bleed on enemies damaged by the skill. You don't need to worry about it. It will give you good healing because of the talent tree that we chose. And you shouldn't really choose those talent trees if you're not going to be inflicting bleed, but it's not a super big requirement. It's very helpful for staying alive and very helpful for doing extra damage, but you need a lot of other mods to make it worthwhile. So that's important to note there. You shouldn't be going into bleed if you have no bleed extras on you. Here, anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction. Didn't get lucky on the third one. Didn't get skills life leech on this, but it's okay. The build still works. It's not just dead. And status power helps with our bleed, so that's also good. Here we have Rivers of Blood. Pretty good. Increases damage by 50% to enemies inflicted with bleed. Very helpful. And Earth's Legacy increases the skill range by 60% on Earthquake. This is actually one of those ones where you don't need it, but the utility on it is massive. You can stay farther away and hit more people with one Earthquake. You know, if you hit double the amount of people with your Earthquake because of this skill, or this mod, then that's one less cast that you need to do on Earthquake. So if you do that twice, because you're going to have Earthquake usable twice, then that means you saved 2 more Earthquakes by being able to hit more people. So it's very dependent on whether or not you can make actual use of the increased skill range. If everybody's already touching you and you aren't getting any value out of this, you do not need this mod, and you can change it into something better for you. Maybe something that gives anomaly power, or maybe something that's more focused on just raw damage. Moving on, increased skills base damage by 84,000. Here you can see I did not have a good roll. Anomaly power, close range status power, not great, but you're not going to get perfect rolls on all your gear, because you got to get the perfect rolls and you got to get the mods you need. But we have good increased skills base damage by 84,000 for Earthquake. Very important, because Earthquake is going to be our main damage source. And Emergency Stance, as always, just to create that protective effect. I know a lot of people don't like to use Emergency Stance. If you're somebody who doesn't like to use Emergency Stance, then you can actually just use Damage Absorber. 50,000 armor, 10% resistance. Pretty good. It's all the time on, much like Golem is, because it's slightly bugged. And if you don't want to use Emergency Stance, that's another alternative. You do need some sort of defense, so it's a good alternative to grab. Moving on here, we have Impaler and Earthquake. Both do actually the same thing, which is give me one more activation on each of the skills, which is great, because if you're able to cast Earthquake twice per cooldown rotation or Impale twice per cooldown rotation, you are effectively doubling your damage. These are the most important mods. You cannot do without them, especially the Extra Quake. You need to be able to cast Earthquake twice. It just has to be. It is literally doubling your damage. So you have to be able to cast it. And I'm just emphasizing, because sometimes I see people running one Earthquake and you are halving your damage. You have to be able to cast Earthquake twice. It's very important. Here you see I have a secondary Funeral Pyre. This is not required. You can just use Scrap Grenade and just keep doing reloads. I switch to this weapon every once in a while where I have a lull or there's a big group of mods, and I can quickly switch to it, blast off a few shots, get some good AoE, and switch back. There's some times where I don't even switch. I just keep reloading the Juggler, because I find that I'm in a tight position where I don't have a lot of opportunity to switch guns in the first place. It's extra sweaty to switch between weapons mid-fight and keep blasting and switch back and keep blasting, reload, switch. Like, it can get to be a lot. And the cooldown reduction, since I'm favoring it so heavily, you're only having a 7-second split between your Earthquakes, and you have Impales in between there. So you won't even have that much time to spam it, but you maybe every second or third rotation of your skills, you might be able to switch to Funeral Pyre once. Not super required, but it can be helpful. So with that being said, that's pretty much the whole overview. I know it's very in-depth and it's a lot, but I think Devastator is a class that people have had a lot of trouble with. And so I think it's important to really emphasize what's going to be important to you and how can you really succeed. Now, moving on from here, just wanted to show you expeditions. I have tier 15 Scorched Lands and Stargrave. Chem Plant, getting closer to getting gold on it. Not all the way there yet, but definitely getting closer with just this build. Nothing crazy. That Boomtown time is a little bit older time, but who the hell wants to do Boomtown anyways? It's brutal. Without a full legendary set, I'm never golding Boomtown. I don't even worry about it. But this is just to show that even with this gear, which I don't think is super unachievable. I know it's a little bit tough with some legendaries, but it's not super unachievable. And I still golded Stargrave just barely, but we count those. And of course, golding Scorched Lands, which is going to be a very big way that you as a Devastator will be able to tier 15 to gold to get into the next echelon in the first place. So that's it. And now we're going to jump into the gameplay. So as you're going to be seeing here, I'm going to be playing obviously Scorched Lands, and the whole point of this is really to get your rotation right for your skills, right? Most of the time you want to be spamming your skills as much as you possibly can off cooldown all the time. Now this beginning is a little sloppy, mainly because it's kind of a weird portion where there's not a lot of mobs. They're kind of just waiting for you. It's almost like the starter to the part. But this is kind of a good show of what you need to be doing as a Devastator, right? Here, I can obviously grab them, get them a lot closer and start spamming Earthquake, but there was no real goal. I was hoping that the Perforers would, eventually line up for me and I'd be able to take it from there. Now, you can see I'm just kind of spamming skills here. That's all you really need to do. But I'm just going to go over to the kind of important parts here, which is you have to be active. You don't get to take a break. There's some classes or some builds where you get to take a break. The Devastator, any of their builds, it's not one of them. You have to be active the whole time. You can see I'm always reloading. I'm not taking breaks on the Scrap Grenade. I know I need to pop it as much as I can. I'm a slow character, so to speed up, I need to play a lot faster and a lot stronger. Now here you can see I take a lot of damage, but not too worried. Skill life leech is really helping me out there. And you can see my earthquake is already almost off cooldown again, right? So when I was saying before that you really don't need to be swapping too often between weapons, this is why. I'm spamming earthquake quite a lot, so I really don't need to worry about switching too often. I just do because sometimes it's slightly faster. Now, if we were to talk about what parts of this build, or what times that this build really excel, it's first off when Skythans aren't there, because Skythans make things so difficult for you. It's hard to impale them, and it's hard to even get them to get earthquaked in the first place. They have to be at a certain range for you to be earthquake. You can see there I hit a few shots, but it's very difficult. Where you're going to excel on this build is things where the groups of enemies are very compact and not coming from multiple angles. The reason that we do Scorch Lands, even though it's really not good for us because it's such a wide range and the enemies don't come from all one layer like they maybe do on Chemplant, it's because the time to get gold is very achievable, and I think it's a really good space to start with if you're trying to get your first few legendaries, get your first few golds, tier 15s under your belt, and make sure that you can actually get some gear to progress forward. I think Scorch Lands is great for that. It's great for everybody, but in the late game, if you have much better gear, this is not going to be somewhere where you want to take your Devastator, because as I stated, it's just the enemies are coming from too many different angles and it makes it too difficult for you to deal with them. Earthquake is obviously very good, but you can see here I'm getting swarmed from both angles. If they were coming from the same angle, I could just earthquake that side and save earthquakes for later. You can see it's getting a little dicey here. Mainly it's the Skythan. You want to stay away from those guys. They're not good for your build. It's very tough if you're not a firepower based build to deal with them, and you can see it's just causing me a little bit of trouble here, but nothing too crazy. Moving on from that, you can see I'm switching to the weapon here. Didn't do too much with it, kind of a waste, but you know, we tried to weave in some extra damage there. So going into the more important part here, you can see that I'm always moving around trying to make sure that I group things up, because I don't want to waste earthquakes. Using earthquakes effectively is how you're going to save a lot of your time. You can see I'm trying to group them up. I really don't want to earthquake just once unless I think, or just one enemy, unless I think that earthquake is going to be up for a bigger group of enemies. And you can see I'm focusing on the alpha first. I know the other perforers will die with one earthquake, so I don't need to worry. I'm trying to spam impale on the enemies that take a lot of my rotations. Too many of my earthquake rotations. You can see I'm trying to stack them there, make sure that I get them together, and that's really how you're going to save time, making sure you're using your skills to the utmost of their effectiveness. And that's what I mean by you can't sit back with this build. You can't just spam earthquake from the back lines and be like, oh, it's going to be fine. No, you need to be making better earthquakes at all times. Keep finding lanes where you can weave in an earthquake against lots of enemies. And there you saw I tried to get greedy and get that other venomous at the side, but I couldn't weave that in as well, so now I'm just trying to focus it down as much as I can. Now we're going to get into the boss section here. And I'm not showing all of Scorch Lands because, as you can tell, Scorch Lands is like a 20-minute, expedition. So I'm only going to show this piece and then the end and then the damage breakout, so you can see where's all my damage really coming from. So when you're going after a boss here, you know you're going to have some other little minions that come at you. But you can see I'm getting nice and close, just spamming the boss, and actually not weaving in good earthquakes here. And that's because I know this boss is going to take a lot of earthquakes. All the other monsters around this boss need to die from my earthquakes while I use it against the Broodmother. It has so much HP that I know that I need to focus on doing the damage to the Broodmother first. Almost all my damage needs to be focused towards her. That is the main reason, is that, look here, I start weaving in a good earthquake. I know that I can hit some of the venomous at the same time, but I know I need to be using the impale on it to speed up as fast as I can. If I focused on the other monsters right now, I'd still have a full health Broodmother to deal with, and that's not going to be good for us. And you can see now I know they're not weaving well for me, so I need to find another way to get rid of them, which is just to rush them and try and deal with them that way. But if you can, imagine if I weaved in some good shots there, those 3-4 scrap grenades would have all went on the Broodmother. That would have been much better for my plan, that would have been much better for my time, and that's an improvement that I could have made right there. And you can see now I'm just kind of like moving around, making sure that I stay active, make sure that I'm trying to look for better angles. I'm trying to get the venomous to line up well so that I can earthquake here, but I just couldn't find it and I couldn't mesh it in well. Now it's also important, as you're going to see in a second, to save your time. Do not impale the last enemy when the next zone is something that you have to grab. And you're going to see why here. This is the final boss of Scorch Lands. If you impale it, it will go on this spike here. And you see the expedition's not ended. that enemy is considered not dead yet. I did it to show, but also I know I'm going to get gold, so I didn't worry. And then finally, when the impale goes away, the expedition completes and we can move on. The enemy is not considered dead. So if you kill an enemy that needs to die for you to progress, do not kill it with impale. Try to weave in something else instead. It's going to save you a lot of time. If you make too many stakes on it, that's, you know, continuous 5-second losses. And you need to make sure that you do it, because as you saw with Stargrave, I only beat it by 10 seconds to get gold. It's important that you weave really well, and that's how you're going to really progress as a Devastator. It's a very hard class, but it's very rewarding. It's the most fun I've had doing expeditions, and it's not that fast. I'm not clearing things super quickly, but I'm at least having a lot of fun, and I think that's really important. So here we're going to get into the damage dealt. You can see, you know, regular damage dealt, not a big deal. But here you can see that Earthquake is the #1, and right below it is Scrap Grenade. You need to be weaving in those scrap grenades. You won't go fast unless you weave them in. Impale is next, Bleed is after that, and then you see the Shadow Comment, Legendary Minefield. Nothing too crazy. But that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. If you liked it, please leave a like. And if you really liked it, please subscribe. And I'll see you guys all next time.